The conversation began with Ellen asking about people who work in schools. She was highlighting the unsung heroes who keep education running smoothly, the custodians, the bus drivers, the office staff who know every student's name. She'd already talked to a crossing guard who had memorized every child's favorite color and a substitute teacher who carried a bag of emergency supplies for forgotten homework. But when she noticed a woman in row 8 wearing what looked like a food service hairnet in her purse, she had no idea that the next few minutes would reveal one of the most heartbreaking and inspiring stories of childhood hunger and adult compassion she'd ever encountered. "Ma'am, do you work in a school cafeteria?" Ellen called out, pointing to a woman who appeared to be in her late 30s. The woman stood up with a warm smile that immediately radiated kindness. She had gentle brown eyes, dark hair pulled back practically, and the sort of nurturing presence that children naturally gravitated toward. "Yes, I do," she replied, her voice carrying genuine enthusiasm. "I'm Jenny Morales, and I work in the cafeteria at Lincoln Elementary School here in LA. "Jenny, how long have you been working in school food service?" 8 years now, and I love every minute of it. There's something special about making sure kids get a good meal during their school day." Ellen walked closer to Jenny's row, sensing there was more to her story than standard cafeteria work. "What's your favorite part of the job?" Jenny's expression became more thoughtful. "Honestly, it's seeing the kids' faces when they get their lunch. For some of them, school breakfast and lunch are the most reliable meals they get all day." The studio audience was paying attention, understanding that Jenny was touching on something deeper than just serving food. "Jenny, that must be heartbreaking to realize some children depend on school meals so heavily." "It is, but it's also motivating. These kids are trying to learn and grow, and they can't do that if they're hungry." Ellen tilted her head, picking up on something in Jenny's tone. "Have you encountered situations where children don't have enough money in their lunch accounts?" Jenny paused, and Ellen could see a mix of sadness and determination cross her face. "Every day, kids come through the line, and when I scan their ID, the computer screen shows insufficient funds. That means they can't afford lunch." The studio quieted as people began to understand what Jenny was describing. "What happens when that occurs?" "Officially, we're supposed to give them a basic meal, usually just a sandwich and milk. But," Jenny hesitated, seeming to consider how much to share. "But what, Jenny?" "But I can't bear to see a child get less food than their classmates just because their family is struggling financially. So I started using my own money to cover the difference." Ellen felt her heart constrict. "You pay for children's lunches out of your own pocket?" "When I have to, yes. I figure 25 cents here, 50 cents there. It's not much for me, but it means a child gets a full, nutritious meal instead of going hungry." Ellen made a decision that would transform this conversation into something much more significant. "Jenny, would you come down here and tell us more about this?" Jenny made her way down to the stage, and Ellen noticed how she moved with the confident efficiency of someone who spent her days serving hundreds of meals. Once they were seated in the interview area, Ellen asked the question that would reveal the true scope of Jenny's generosity. "Jenny, you said you started paying for children's lunches when their accounts were empty. How often does this happen?" Jenny looked down at her hands. "More often than people realize. At our school, probably 30 to 40 kids a week come through the line without enough money in their accounts." Ellen felt her amazement growing. 30 to 40 kids a week? Jenny, how many of those do you help?" "All of them," Jenny said simply. "Every single one. I can't choose which child deserves to eat and which one doesn't." The audience gasped audibly. Ellen stared at Jenny in disbelief. "Jenny, you're paying for 30 to 40 school lunches every week?" "Sometimes more during tough times of the month, when families are stretched thin before payday. But yes, basically I make sure no child at our school goes without a proper lunch." Ellen stood up and walked to her desk, returning with a folder that her producers had managed to compile during their conversation. "Jenny, while we've been talking, my team has been doing some calculations. Can I share what we found?" Jenny nodded, looking nervous. Ellen opened the folder. "Jenny, if you're helping 30 to 40 children per week at an average cost of $3 per meal over the course of a school year, you're spending approximately $4,000 to $5,000 of your own money feeding other people's children." Jenny's eyes widened. "I never really added it up like that." "But that's not all. Jenny, you've been doing this for how long?" "About 6 years now," Jenny replied quietly. Ellen felt tears building in her eyes. "Jenny, over 6 years you've spent between $24,000 and $30,000 of your own salary making sure children don't go hungry at school." Jenny was staring at Ellen in shock. When you put it like that, it sounds like a lot. It is a lot, Jenny. That's more than many people make in an entire year, and you've spent it ensuring that children who aren't even your own, get adequate nutrition during their school day. Ellen sat back down. Jenny, tell me about some of the children you've helped. Jenny's face immediately softened with obvious affection. There's Carlos, a third grader whose dad got laid off last year. Carlos started coming through the line looking so embarrassed when his account was empty. Now he comes up to me every morning and whispers, "Thank you, Miss Jenny." Ellen leaned forward, completely absorbed in Jenny's stories. And there's Isabella, a fifth grader who's being raised by her grandmother on Social Security. Isabella used to pretend she wasn't hungry when she couldn't afford lunch. Now she knows she can count on getting a full meal, and her grades have actually improved since she's been eating better. How do the children react when you help them? Most of them are just grateful. They know I'm helping them, and they appreciate it. Some of them hug me, some draw me pictures. But the best reaction is when they stop looking worried about food and start focusing on learning. Ellen felt her heart swelling with admiration for this woman's selfless dedication. Jenny, what made you start doing this? Jenny's expression became more emotional. I grew up poor. I remember what it felt like to be hungry at school, to watch other kids eat while you had nothing. I promised myself that if I ever had the power to make sure a child didn't experience that, I would. Ellen stood up again. Jenny, I want you to meet some people. From the wings of the stage walked a group that made Jenny's face immediately light up with recognition. Children of various ages, accompanied by their parents, all approaching with obvious excitement and affection. Jenny, these are some of the students and families you've helped at Lincoln Elementary, Ellen announced. The first to reach her was a boy who looked to be about 8, who immediately hugged Jenny around the waist. Miss Jenny, it's Carlos. I brought my mom to meet you. A woman in her 30s approached with tears in her eyes. Jenny, I'm Carlos's mother, Maria. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for my son. Jenny hugged Carlos tightly. Carlos, you look so healthy and happy. Maria addressed the studio audience. When my husband lost his job, we were struggling to pay for everything. Carlos's lunch account was always empty, and I was so embarrassed. But Miss Jenny made sure my son never went hungry, never felt different from the other kids. A teenage girl stepped forward next. Miss Jenny, it's Isabella. I'm in 8th grade now. Jenny's eyes filled with tears. Isabella, look how tall you've gotten. Isabella turned to Ellen in the audience. Miss Jenny changed my life. When I was in elementary school, I was always worried about having enough food. Because of her, I could focus on my studies instead of my empty stomach. I'm on the honor roll now, and I want to be a teacher so I can help kids the way Miss Jenny helped me. One by one, current and former students shared their stories with Jenny, each one a testament to how her kindness had allowed them to focus on education instead of hunger. But Ellen had arranged something that would show Jenny the even broader impact of her work. Jenny, these children represent just a portion of the students you've helped, but there's something else you should know. Ellen walked over to her desk and returned with more papers. We contacted Lincoln Elementary School, and they shared some remarkable statistics with us. Jenny looked curious and slightly apprehensive. Ellen began reading. Since you started your informal lunch assistance program 6 years ago, Lincoln Elementary has seen a 35% improvement in standardized test scores, a 40% reduction in classroom behavioral problems, and a 50% increase in attendance rates. Jenny stared at Ellen in amazement. Really? The principal told us that they've been trying to figure out what changed to create such dramatic improvements in student performance. Jenny, it was you. When children aren't hungry, they can learn better, behave better, and want to come to school. Ellen handed Jenny one of the documents. This is a letter from your principal. She writes, Jenny Morales has single-handedly addressed childhood hunger at our school. Her compassion and generosity have created an environment where every child can focus on learning instead of worrying about their next meal. Jenny was reading the letter with tears streaming down her face. But Ellen had more revelations. Jenny, during our commercial break, we contacted the LA Unified School District. They want to meet with you about expanding your approach district-wide. A distinguished woman in a business suit walked onto the stage. Jenny, I'm Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services for LA Unified. Jenny looked stunned to be meeting such a high-ranking school official. Jenny, what you've been doing at Lincoln Elementary is exactly what we need to implement across all our schools, Dr. Rodriguez said as she sat down with them. Childhood hunger is one of the biggest barriers to education, and you've proven that addressing it directly improves every aspect of a child's school experience. Ellen watched this conversation with growing excitement. But Dr. Rodriguez had more to share. Jenny, we've been studying your school's remarkable improvements, and we discovered something extraordinary. We compared Lincoln Elementary's data with schools of similar demographics across the district. She pulled out a tablet with charts and graphs. Schools with similar poverty rates, similar student populations, similar challenges, none of them have achieved the improvements that Lincoln has seen since you started your lunch assistance program. Ellen leaned forward, fascinated. What kind of differences are we talking about? Dramatic ones, Dr. Rodriguez replied. Lincoln Elementary now outperforms schools in much wealthier neighborhoods. Their students are achieving at levels we typically only see in schools where most families can afford private tutoring and enrichment programs. Jenny stared at the data in disbelief. You're saying feeding the kids made that much difference? Jenny, hunger affects everything: concentration, memory, behavior, attendance, emotional regulation. When you eliminated hunger as a factor, you allowed these children's natural intelligence and potential to flourish. Dr. Rodriguez turned to address the studio audience. What Jenny discovered through compassion, researchers have been proving through science. Proper nutrition is as essential to education as qualified teachers or adequate textbooks. Ellen felt the weight of this revelation. Jenny, you didn't just feed hungry children. You proved that addressing basic human needs is foundational to learning. But there was more. A young man in his early 20s stepped forward from the group of visitors. Miss Jenny, do you remember me? I'm Miguel Santos. You helped me when I was in second grade, about 8 years ago. Jenny's face immediately lit up with recognition. Miguel, my goodness, you're all grown up. Look at you. Miguel was now tall and confident, wearing a college sweatshirt. Miss Jenny, I wanted to tell you what happened after elementary school. Ellen gestured for Miguel to continue, sensing this was going to be significant. When I was 7, my family was going through really hard times. My dad was working construction, but the work wasn't steady. My mom was cleaning houses, but she couldn't work much because she was pregnant with my little sister. Miguel's voice grew stronger as he continued. I remember being so hungry at school, but being too embarrassed to tell anyone. I would watch other kids eat lunch and pretend I wasn't hungry. Jenny was listening with tears in her eyes, remembering the shy little boy Miguel had been. Then Miss Jenny started making sure I got lunch every day. Not just any lunch, the full meal with fruit and vegetables and milk. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about being hungry during class. Miguel turned to address the studio audience. That might seem like a small thing, but it changed everything for me. I could pay attention in class. I could focus on reading instead of the empty feeling in my stomach. My grades improved, and for the first time I started to believe I was smart. Ellen felt tears building as Miguel continued his story. Miss Jenny didn't just feed me that year, she showed me that adults cared about my success, that my education mattered, that I deserved the same opportunities as every other kid. Miguel pulled out a graduation program from his backpack. I graduated valedictorian from my high school. I'm now a junior at UCLA, studying to become a social worker so I can help families like mine. Jenny was sobbing now, overwhelmed by seeing the long-term impact of her simple acts of kindness. But here's the most important part, Miguel continued. When I got to high school and saw younger kids who reminded me of myself, hungry, embarrassed, struggling, I started a program where students could anonymously donate lunch money for classmates who needed it. Ellen's eyes widened. Miguel, you created your own version of what Jenny did for you? Exactly. Miss Jenny taught me that helping others with their basic needs isn't charity, it's community. She showed me that when we take care of each other, everyone benefits. Miguel turned back to Jenny. Miss Jenny, because of you, over 300 high school students have received assistance through our program. You didn't just help me, you created a helper. Ellen stood up, recognizing the profound significance of this revelation. Jenny, do you understand what Miguel is telling us? Your kindness didn't just impact individual children, it taught them to be kind to others, creating a ripple effect of generosity. Dr. Rodriguez added her perspective. This is exactly why we want Jenny to help us design district policy. She's proven that addressing childhood hunger doesn't just help individual students, it creates a culture of caring that spreads throughout the school community. Ellen addressed the studio audience. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing is extraordinary. Jenny thought she was just buying lunch for hungry children, but she was actually demonstrating how addressing basic human needs can transform educational outcomes and inspire future generations of helpers. She turned back to Jenny. Jenny, Miguel represents something incredible. You didn't just feed him for 1 year, you influenced his entire life trajectory and his commitment to helping others. We'd like to offer you a position as District Coordinator for Student Nutrition Services, Dr. Rodriguez continued. You would help us design and implement programs to ensure that no child in LA Unified goes hungry during the school day. Jenny stared at Dr. Rodriguez. You want to hire me for the school district? We want to take your model, ensuring every child gets adequate nutrition regardless of their family's financial situation, and apply it to all 640 schools in our district. Jenny, you would help us feed over 600,000 students. Ellen couldn't contain her excitement. Jenny, do you understand what's happening? Your personal mission to feed hungry children at one school is becoming district policy for the entire LA school system. Jenny looked around at all the students and families who had come to thank her, at Dr. Rodriguez, at Ellen, trying to process the magnitude of what was being offered. I just couldn't stand seeing kids go hungry, Jenny said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ellen stood up and made her final statement. Jenny Morales thought she was just a cafeteria worker who occasionally helped children buy lunch, but what she actually was is a pioneer in addressing childhood hunger in schools. Her compassion and sacrifice have proven that when we feed children's bodies, we also feed their minds and spirits. She turned to Jenny one more time. Jenny, you've shown us that sometimes the most important education happens not in the classroom, but in the cafeteria, where a caring adult ensures that every child has the nutrition they need to learn and grow. As the show wrapped up, Jenny was surrounded by the students and families she had helped, all of them celebrating, not just her recognition but the expansion of the program that had allowed them to focus on learning instead of hunger. 6 months later, the Jenny Morales model had been implemented in over 200 schools throughout LA Unified. The district had created a fund that allowed cafeteria workers to immediately assist students with insufficient lunch funds, with the costs covered by a combination of district resources and community donations. Carlos, now in 4th grade, had become a peer mentor, helping other students navigate the cafeteria and making sure new kids felt welcome. Isabella was tutoring younger students and had started a club focused on helping classmates with homework. And every day when Jenny arrived at her new district office, she carried with her the knowledge that her simple inability to watch children go hungry had transformed into a systematic approach to ensuring that learning and nutrition went hand in hand. Because Jenny had learned something that changed how she thought about education and service, that the foundation of learning isn't textbooks or technology, it's making sure every child has the basic human needs met that allow them to focus on growing, learning, and believing in their own potential.